Thug Teachers tells the story of a man named Dae Gi, who gets into a fight with a group of thugs on the roof of a building. Even though he was alone, he could easily beat the thugs because he was a gangster. 7 years have passed since the incident. Dae Gi is now retired from the world of gangsters and starting to live a new life after successfully graduating from the College of Education. Dae Gi, looking for a place to live, comes across an apartment he plans to live in. While chatting with the apartment owner he is going to rent, Dae Gi finds out that the apartment has a pretty horrific history, having been used as a location for ending the previous resident life. But because the rent for the apartment is relatively cheap, he decides to keep renting the apartment until he gets a permanent job with a high income. The scene then switches to show a group of high school students who are bullying their own teacher until he falls unconscious. The teacher, known as Mr. Park, is a gym teacher at Kangho High. After experiencing the bullying, Mr. Park decided to resign from the school because he could not stand being treated harshly by the bad students in his class. Because of that, the principal then gathered the teachers and told them that from now on, the students who got into fights and bullied the teachers would be immediately expelled from school. After that, the principal asked them to find a new teacher who would replace Mr. Park at the school. Because it is very difficult to find new teachers who are willing to teach at Kangho High because the school has a bad reputation. One of the teachers, named Mr. M, then calls Dae Gi, who turns out to be his former student who just graduated from the College of Education, and asks him to be a substitute teacher at Kangho High. Dae Gi, who is looking for a job, immediately accepts the job offer without a second thought. The next day, Dae Gi rushes to Kangho High on his scooter. On the way, he meets a group of Kangho High School students smoking cigarettes. Since it's inappropriate for high school students to smoke, especially in public, he stops and warns them. However, the students don't accept his warning and instead challenge him to a fight. As a former bad boy who is good at fighting, Dae Gi can easily knock out the bad boys and punish them. Arriving at school, Dae Gi immediately meets the principal and the teachers who welcome him, while warning him that the students at Kangho High School are bad students who are very hard to manage and always fight against the teacher. After that, Dae Gi is brought into his class by a female teacher named Miss Yuri. When Dae Gi enters the classroom, the students seem engrossed in their own activities and completely ignore his presence in the classroom. He feels ignored, then bangs the table hard to get the students' attention and asks them to be quiet. It turns out that several students who were previously caught smoking by him are in the class, and their attitude seems very afraid of him. Dae Gi then writes his name on the blackboard and introduces himself. But the students laughed at him because his name sounded funny and had a strange meaning. But he doesn't mind it at all. After class, a group of students is talking about something, and one of them, Ji-yoon, is asking her friends about how to get a lot of money in a short time. Ji-yoon is a typical materialistic girl who is willing to do anything to earn money. The bad boys named Kang and Bi-yoon, who had been beaten up by Dae Gi earlier for smoking, hear Ji-yoon's conversation and then approach her. Kang and Bi-yoon offer Ji-yoon a job with a big reward. Without thinking, she immediately accepted the interesting offer, even though her two friends tried to warn her not to immediately believe the words of these bad students. That night, when Dae Gi is riding his scooter and about to go home, suddenly he bumps into someone around the corner, who is none other than Ji-yoon. When he was about to help her, suddenly Kang and Bi-yoon appeared while recording Dae Gi's actions with a cell phone camera, intending to trap him with accusations of sexual harassment of Ji-yoon, as they had done plan ahead. But then, another student came up to them on a bicycle, and then took Kang's cell phone, then deleted the video footage. His name is Nam-hoon, and he seems to be quite respected by the bad students, which shows that he is quite powerful. Dae Gi thinks that Nam-hoon is the leader of the bad students, but he denies this. The next day, Nam-hoon is about to go to school accompanied by his girlfriend, a girl named Ye-rin. That morning, Ye-rin looks happy because she has good news that she will announce to her classmates. Behind them, Kang and Bi-yoon, along with their boss, Dae-yoon, seem to see Nam-hoon and Ye-rin, where expression of the three of them look very annoyed. On the other hand, Dae Gi tries to find out about Nam-hoon and asks the teachers about him. He finally finds out that Nam-hoon used to be a gang leader at his previous middle school. But since entering high school, he began to change his attitude slowly and almost never involved in fights, especially after dating Ye-rin. Meanwhile, in class, Ye-rin tells her classmates that she has signed a contract with a record company and will soon start her debut as an idol. The news then made the whole class excited, including Dae-yoon and his gang, who purposefully overreacted it. They then insult Ye-rin and humiliate her. At first, Nam-hoon tries to hold his anger because he remembers the punishment that the principal gave to students who were caught in a fight. But when one of them purposely pushes Ye-rin down, Nam-hoon can't hold his anger and immediately beats him up. Dae Gi, who knows the fight, then immediately intervenes them. However, the incident seems to have been known by the principal, who then decided to expel Nam-hoon from school in accordance with regulations. Hearing this, Dae Gi tries to convince the principal to give Nam-hoon a chance because he thinks the bad students purposely confront him to get him to start a fight. Even Dae Gi kneeled and begged the principal to reconsider his decision. Seeing Dae Gi's seriousness, the principal finally melts and decides to give Nam-hoon one more chance. Dae Gi's action actually made all the teachers' admiration of him, including Miss Yuri, because he really cares about his students, even though they are naughty and often fight. When Dae Gi and Miss Yuri are about to go home together, they accidentally meet Ji-yoon, who is being scolded and treated rudely by her boss at the place where she usually works part-time. Dae Gi then rushes to help her and beats her boss, which makes Miss Yuri even more attracted to him. Elsewhere, Dae-yoon and his henchmen are having a meeting with a gangster boss. Besides Dae-yoon and his henchmen, there were students named Choi and his henchmen, who were students from Kangho High as well. Because the gangster boss doesn't want to have two gangs who dominate one school, he then orders Dae-yoon and Choi to decide who has the one who is worthy of leading and controlling Kangho High in a fight between gangs. Whoever wins the fight will become the leader of the student gang and rule the whole school. Choi then goes to Nam-hoon and asks him to join his group so they can win the duel against Dae-yoon's group. But he strongly refuses the request because he doesn't want to get into any more fights. Elsewhere, Dae Gi receives a call from an old friend asking for his help in dealing with a group of thugs who are troubling because they often interrupt his business. However, Dae Gi refuses his friend's request because he has decided not to get into fights anymore, because now he's a teacher. Meanwhile, a teacher at Kangho High named Mr. Lee secretly finds information about Dae Gi and finds out that he used to be the leader of the student gang and the bad boy who was feared by most high school students in the area. The next morning at school, Mr. Lee then reveals Dae Gi's past to the other teachers and accuses Nam-hoon of being Dae Gi's accomplice because he was so stubborn in defending him to not being expelled. Hearing this, Miss Yuri and several other teachers who had been very friendly to Dae Gi suddenly became cold and began to distance themselves from him. It's turned out that Mr. Lee purposefully cornered Dae Gi because he felt jealous of him, who was close with Miss Yuri because Mr. Lee had feelings of love for her. Meanwhile, Choi apparently hasn't given up on inviting Nam-hoon into his group in class. This time, he purposefully uses dirty methods by threatening to spread photos of Ye-rin while she was smoking to the record company, which she has signed a contract to get her out of the company. Nam-hoon, who doesn't want to break Ye-rin's career, is finally forced to accept Choi's request and is willing to join his group. That night, Dae Gi sees his father, who looks irritated after receiving news that his son is still involved in a fight, even though he has become a teacher. Dae Gi then explains everything to his father to straight up any misunderstandings because he doesn't get into fights and just wants to help his students. Long story short, the day arrives between Dae-yoon's gang and Choi's gang will fight to determine who is worthier to be the student gang leader. They choose a location under an overpass that is entirely quiet so as to not be caught. Dae-yoon's gang looks surprised that Nam-hoon decided to side with Choi, even though he always said he didn't want to get into fights anymore and just wanted to focus on his school. On the other hand, the teachers already knew about the fight and rushed to find the fight's location of the bad students. In the middle of the fight, Dae Gi suddenly appears and asks his students to stop the fight. But because they never respect and regard him as a teacher, they attack him, so he is forced to fight the bad students. At first, Dae Gi can outperform his students, but because he's alone, he starts to get overwhelmed. Moreover, he can't use all his strength because he doesn't want to hurt his students. When one of them is about to hit him, Nam-hoon then steps forward to save Dae Gi, and together, they try to confront the bad students. After Dae Gi and Nam-hoon manage to beat the bad students and make them get along, the teachers finally arrive there and see Dae Gi is advising his students not to have any more fights between them. However, even though Dae Gi has managed to break up the fights and solve the problems that occur among the students, the school assumes that he is the one who has caused the students' fights and decides to fire him. Knowing Dae Gi's expelled from school, Nam-hoon and his students, who have now gotten along with and respect him as their teacher, are deeply saddened by his departure. All the students seem to come out and accompany Dae Gi, who walks out of the school with a sad look. After that, Dae Gi looks back to meet his father, but this time, his father seems proud of him for teaching his students not to fight anymore, even though he was fired from his job as a teacher. The film ends by showing Dae Gi accompanying his father to monitor the construction of the land planned to be used as a school building. The moral that can be learned from this movie is, everyone has the opportunity to change for the better, and we, as the closest people, should support these changes, not judge ourselves in the past or expect too much for the future.